here today with author Baker Morrow, who translated into English the 500-year-old accounts of the explorer Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca in his book, The South American Expeditions, 1540 to 1545. Why is it important in the 21st century now to know about this 16th century explorer, Cabeza de Vaca?
You know, Augusta, when the Spaniards first came to the Western Hemisphere 500 years ago, they began a revolution in world thinking. They made it possible for all of us to believe that the world was round. They changed the perceptions of medieval Europe in regard to the actual nature of the world.
What three words come to mind when you think about Cabeza de Vaca?
Fortitude, persistence, and stamina. Cabeza de Vaca is one of those rare figures in history who always lives up to his legend or his reputation. He is the most indefatigable figure I've ever heard about in world history. He was the first European to walk across North America, and he was the first Spaniard to play important roles in North America and in South America at the same time during the 1500s. Cabeza de Vaca was the treasurer of the Narvaez expedition to Florida in the 1520s. The expedition had, by some accounts, 300 members, and Cabeza de Vaca and his three companions were the only survivors. Phenomenally tough people. They lost all their clothes. They walked along naked for much of their journey, and they walked across the Sierra Madre, both the eastern Sierra Madre, the western Sierra Madre, the entire Gulf Coast of the American South, including the whole coast of Texas, and of course they began their journey in Florida, so it was quite a trip.
What do you think made the guy tick?
Most people don't think of conquistadors as having a family business, but in the case of Cabeza de Vaca, it actually was his family business. His grandfather was a gentleman named Pedro de Vera, and he was the conqueror of Grand Canary Island in the 1470s. And he got a commission from the King of Spain to lead his conquest. And the interesting part of that story, Augusta, is that he had to finance his entire expedition himself. He had to furnish the ships and the men and all of their equipment. And to do so, he borrowed money from Moorish bankers, and to secure the loan, he had to give both of his sons over to his bankers as hostages.
Oh my gosh.
So we can actually say he hawked his boys to become the conqueror of Grand Canary Island. And fortunately for Cabeza de Vaca, one of those boys was his own father.
Wow.
And so Cabeza de Vaca grew up on his grandfather's knee once the conquest was complete, as hearing all these tales of conquest, and I'm sure that made a huge impression on him as a young man.
He's different from other explorers.
He's more interested in exploration than in conquest. And another aspect of his personality that's very appealing in the 21st century is from his long experience in North America, he really learned to live cheek to jowl with the Indian tribes all across the continent. He respected the Indians. He always believed in paying them for all the provisions that he got and the clothing that he got. And he carried this experience on to South America.
You talk about his unimaginable resilience, and he faced a lot of dangers, in his plight, and he even to some degree his own men would turn against him, but you couldn't keep him down.
That seems to have begun from the very moment he got the royal commission to sail to South America as the second governor of the La Plata province. After his great trek across North America, he was a hero in Mexico. And he wrote an account of his North American journeys that is one of the founding pieces of literature in American literature these days. He also went back to Spain in the early 1530s and delivered his account of his North American travels to the king and said, "Your Majesty, I'm interested in another job if you have something coming up. And King Charles said, "What did you have in mind?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to go back to Florida. Your first commissioner there, the Adelantado Narvaez, is now dead, and I'd like to take his place." The king said, "I'm sorry, I've just given that particular commission to a gentleman named De Soto."
Oh, jeez.
And I don't have anything available. Try back in a short time. So Cabeza de Vaca hangs around the court. Only a couple of months later, the first governor of La Plata travels home to make his report to Spain and dies in the mid-Atlantic on his way home. So the king says to one of his assistants, "Who was that gentleman who came in here a couple of months ago?" "Cabeza de Vaca, Your Majesty." "Well, bring him back in." So the king says, "I've just had an opening."
Simply put.
Simply put, I've just had an opening. Our colony in the La Plata province, which is Argentina, Paraguay, parts of Uruguay, and Brazil. Would you be interested in becoming the second governor? You need to rescue our colony, buy all the ships yourself. It will take 300 to 400 men plus all their horses and all their equipment. I want you to purchase everything at your own expense. Off you go, and oh, by the way, you must be in the service of the church in this venture of yours. And if you make any money, I want 1/5 of it. Deal?
Wow.
And
Timing's everything.
Timing's everything. Cabeza de Vaca says, "Yes, I will take that commission on." So that's how he leaves for South America from the docks of Seville in 1540.
That's amazing.
And that's where this book came from.
Where did you find the research materials for this?
Cabeza de Vaca's commentaries are really one of the rarest books in the world, Augusta. About 3 original copies remain.
Wow.
So I went about trying to get an original of the 1555 expedition, and I found a very good one that was published in 1906. It's the Serrano y Sanz edition of Cabeza de Vaca's writings.
You also brought the book to life through some of your illustrations and drawings.
When you're dealing with a 500-year-old book, the photography process in the 1500s is not particularly
Hasn't evolved
strong.
yet. Yeah.
But what I had been interested in from the beginning is what the primeval American landscape looked like in the 1500s when the Europeans first appeared. And Cabeza de Vaca has some of the very best descriptions that we have
Really?
of that early American landscape. I thought that the point of the book would be better illustrated.
Your translation of the accounts kind of changes history's perception of Cabeza de Vaca a little bit. How did his life really turn out in the end?
For the whole 20th century, when you read about Cabeza de Vaca, you'd hear these vague references to, oh, the poor man, he was in exile, oh, the king never appreciated, oh, all these things. No. So with a clear translation, what we now understand is that Cabeza de Vaca became a lobbyist, probably for his hometown, at the court of the king. He was restored back to royal favor. He was very much moving in royal circles again. He may or may not have gained another position in the government of Spain, but he certainly died a very happy old man with all of the work that he had done, probably in his bed in his hometown.
Wow.
In about 1559.
And left a very rich history to talk about today. Thank you so much, Baker, for sharing all that.
Oh,
that was incredible.
My pleasure. He's a fascinating character.